6 fights are taking place on the main card of Cerrone vs. Oliveira on Sunday, February 20th, 2016. Hello everyone, I'm Tyler, and you're watching Rapid MMA, and these are my main card predictions. We'll talk briefly about who I'm picking and why, and as always, please leave your thoughts and picks down in the comments below. The first fight on the main card is James Krause versus Shane Campbell. This is one of my favorite matchups on the card because I'm curious to see how the styles play out. Both these guys are predominantly strikers, but Krause does implement some form of grappling most of his fights, whereas Campbell usually keeps his standing. However, Campbell is a purple belt in BJJ and has a couple wins by way of submission. Shane at his base is a Muay Thai kickboxer stylist, and a very good one at that. As he transitioned to MMA, he began working on his wrestling, which really has paid dividends, at least in the lower tier MMA scene. We saw this against Silverio, where he defended the takedowns, he worked well in the scramble, and he had decent transitions off his back. He did have trouble getting him out of his guard, but eventually was able to reverse position and get to his feet. No doubt though, Campbell wants to keep this standing. That's where he's most comfortable. I'm sure he's very well rounded and is comfortable everywhere, but he has more experience in Muay Thai, and keeping that standing is probably his best bet overall. He'll want to keep his range and use plenty of kicks. Krause is a little taller, so Campbell can work the entire body using punch-kick combinations. Attacking the body of Krause would be wise since that spot has been open in the past. Krause has had trouble with opponents who decide to kickbox and keep that range as opposed to staying at boxing range. However, we've seen Shane get a little sloppy with his footwork. He lost to Mendes because he stood southpaw, and he let Mendes get that dominant foot position multiple times, which eventually led to him losing that fight. Also, he's a very upright fighter and can become flat-footed, so he'll need to just be careful of keeping his head off the center line, which is something he already knows. But Muay Thai stylists can tend to keep a rather stiff upper body. Both fighters get hit quite a bit, but have high output of strikes. I think Krause might counter more often and maybe look for takedowns. When he gets comfortable, he also gets more creative using front kicks to the face, cartwheel kicks, Superman punches, and flying attacks. He's also the taller fighter, as I mentioned, so knees to the body or head might be more available. This is a really tough fight to pick, and I think it's going to be a fun one to watch. I'm going with Krause though by decision, but really it comes down to who has the better game plan because they're both very capable of defeating each other. I think Krause's movement and footwork is just a little more suited for MMA. He's a little more diverse with the striking. He's not afraid to grapple, but he has to use his range a little better and watch out for punch kick combinations, especially to the body. Hard fight for both guys, and I won't be surprised if Campbell wins, but my pick is Krause via decision. Next fight up is Camozzi versus Riggs. I went through the UFC fight library to watch a bunch of Joe Riggs fights, and other than him being one of the unluckiest fighters with the nut kicks, the random injuries, the damage from ut kicks, it's a common theme that Riggs just isn't quite able to put it together in the octagon. It was even said in a few of his fights from Joe Rogan that they hear he's a beast in the gym, but when it's time to shine, he hasn't been able to show his full potential. Regardless though, it's important for all fighters to never underestimate their opponents. Joe Riggs has a wealth of experience and is a well-rounded fighter. He has a powerful lead hand, he stands southpaw, and his ground and pound in the guard is some of the most underlooked in the game. If he wins this fight, it's by pressure and combinations on the feet, doubling up on the lead left hook, making Camozzi move backwards. Of course, doing what he does best and landing powerful strikes in the guard will work as well. Camozzi is noticeably still getting better. My knock on him in past fights is leaving his head on the center line, not angling out after punches, and not using his distance as effectively as he probably could. He also gets stuck in a rhythm of throwing one strike and backing off. 2 punch combinations would greatly benefit him. Using more step and knees would work well against a lot of his opponents since he is the taller fighter. Camozzi will be holding a 5.5 inch reach advantage, but that's nothing new for Joe Riggs. However, that doesn't mean that Camozzi can't take advantage of this. Movement, angles, and using his clinch when Riggs gets in close will all work. However, Camozzi needs to watch out for the takedown while inside the clinch. He has pretty good takedown defense, so we'll see how it turns out. I wasn't sure who to pick for this fight. I think both have a good chance of taking home a victory. At this time, Camozzi is a -260 favorite, and although I don't quite agree with those odds, I do believe it makes sense that he's the favorite. I'm picking Camozzi to win by second round TKO. I think Camozzi's reach will probably dictate where this fight takes place, and I believe he's just good enough to fend off takedowns and make it back to his feet if it does go to the ground. Kicks to the body, and we know Camozzi has very good light kicks, are going to heavily impede Riggs' ability to get inside. It'll all set up a beautiful kick to the head in the second round. So I'm picking Chris Camozzi via second round head kick knockout. Next fight on the card is Dennis Bermudez versus Tatsuya Kawajiri. This is another matchup that's kind of hard to choose, and it's not one that I'm really interested in. They both have this clash and break style where they force entries to takedowns. I'd say Kawajiri is more unorthodox with his striking and utilizes more kicks. I do believe this will be a difficult fight for Bermudez. His usual style could really hurt him in this fight. He had a really rough fight with Jeremy Stephens, and it ended with a flying knee knockout. He definitely doesn't want to get knocked around like he did in that fight. I think Kawajiri is much more defeatable when his opponents use a lot of feints and head movements, exactly like in his fight against Gilbert Melendez. However, Kawajiri's output on the feet is rather low, and Bermudez will use the stale opportunities on the feet to exchange and get inside. I think his wrestling is quite a bit better, and he doesn't work for takedowns as desperately as Kawajiri does. I think Kawajiri's best effort is done on the feet. If he's able to fend off takedowns and strike at range, he has a chance of winning. But my pick is Dennis Bermudez via decision, and if it doesn't get done by decision, I do think it could be by a submission. But my official pick, Dennis Bermudez via decision. Next fight, Cody Garbrandt versus Augusto Mendes. And if you haven't heard, Cody Garbrandt was originally scheduled to face John Lineker, but he had to pull out due to illness. His replacement will be making his UFC debut, and he's migrating from Legacy Fighting Championships. He's an undefeated Augusto Mendes with a record of 5-0. According to SureDog, he's 5'6", 135, and he fights out of the MMA lab in Glendale, Arizona. Same place as Joe Riggs, Benson Henderson, Jamie Varner, and Brian Barberina, who we just saw defeat Sage Northcutt, just to name a few of the guys there. He is an IBJJF black belt gi and 2-time no gi world champion and a 2-time black belt world pro champion, so we know he's very dangerous on the ground. We don't know to what extent that will translate to the higher levels of MMA, but 4 victories come by way of submission and 1 via TKO from elbows. So it should be no surprise Augusto will be looking to take this to the ground. He obviously has some wrestling skills because we've seen him go for a double leg in the past. He'll look for some submission opportunities in the clinch standing, but that is just more to drag it to the ground. And then from there, it's pass until he gets to mount, and he'll look for submission opportunities in that position. Arm triangles and arm bars. He has a triangle choke off his back as well. His TKO victory comes from a full mount position, but I just don't think his boxing is quite on Cody's level. He throws until he gets inside of the clinch range, sort of like Ronda Rousey, but I mean, he gets hit a lot. I think the game plan will be simple. There isn't much for Cody to go off as far as tape, but if he has been looking, he'll notice that a lot of Augusto's opponents don't really know what they're doing off their back or how to defend a takedown correctly. I think if Cody doesn't get too complacent, he should be able to defend takedown attempts and just work them on the feet. I'm pretty confident Cody has this fight in the bag. It's going to be a difficult fight for Augusto on the feet, and we're not sure if he's able to capitalize on the mat. As long as Cody stays patient, keeps his range, I think he can work Augusto no problem. So I'm going to go second round, TKO for Cody Garbrandt. Co-main event, Derek Brunson versus Rowan Carneiro. Yet another good matchup, but the name value isn't quite there. Rowan is a veteran. He's been around for quite a long time. He even fought Anderson Silva back in 2002 outside the UFC. This is his second stint in the UFC. He was cut back in 2008 after losing to Rio Chonin at UFC 88. And after that, he went on to win 5 fights outside the octagon. The only really notable win was a decision victory over Brock Larson, which wasn't the best showing from either fighter, but I do think that was a couple fights in one night, but I'm not sure on that. If it was tournament based, then that makes sense because the cardio was probably not quite there. But Rowan's most recent best performance was by far against Mark Munoz. Munoz made an awful mistake and did not use his wrestling well, allowing Rowan to transition to his back and secure a rear naked choke. That's what Rowan likes to do though, try to get it to the ground. Most of his wins either come by decision or submission. On the feet, he tries to tie it up after an exchange and get a takedown from the clinch. I think anyone who's able to use their range effectively will basically dismantle Carneiro. Brunson is taller, but doesn't hold a reach advantage. He outputs more on the feet, but gets countered quite often. I don't see Rowan getting the better of Brunson on the feet. He's a little too flat-footed in my opinion, and he doesn't really throw a lot. I also think it will be very hard for him to take it to the ground. it's going to be hard to knock out a guy who doesn't really trade on the feet, but stays tight in the clinch. So I'm going to say Brunson by decision. It's not that Rowan can't win this fight, but I think Brunson's just got that edge on him. So Derek Brunson via decision. Main event is Donald Cerrone versus Alex Oliveira. It's the ranginess of Oliveira that Cerrone has to be aware of. I'm not sure that Oliveira has a reach advantage, but he does fight much longer and he uses the jab very well. He's not the best striker in the division, but he's developing a style that works well for him. If Cerrone is able to use combinations and avoid being eaten up by the jab, I think this will weigh in his favor. Cerrone's leg kicks and body kicks should favor him in this fight. I think Cerrone would be wise to get Alex in a clinch too and work knees. He's a taller fighter, so I would imagine there's some opportunity to be had there. Alex sometimes leaves that chin very high, even though he has quite a bit of upper body movement. I think it's a matter of time before Cerrone just kicks his head off. Also, if Alex decides he wants this on the ground, he has to be very cautious because Cerrone is excellent there. I think Cerrone eats him up on the feet. We've seen him take big punches before, and that can happen here too, but he simply finds a way to work through it. Alex leaves a lot of openings on the body and head, but this is a fight where he isn't the taller man. I think Cerrone hurts him on the feet and locks into submission, so I'm going to go second round rear naked choke for Cowboy Cerrone. That does it for my main card picks for UFC Fight Night Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That does take place on Sunday, February 21st, so don't forget that. And just to top off this video, let's go ahead and go through the main event and co-main event for Bellator 149, which takes place on Friday this weekend. And it's pretty obvious, I think, what's going to happen, and I think would go to decision. Will we be surprised if it does get finished? No. By either side? No, I don't think so. But Royce Gracie is not really built for this style of fight, in my opinion. I don't think he's somebody who wants to have the rounds. He wants to go for no time limit, and that can last an hour and a half, 2 hours until he can tire out his opponent and get a submission. However, that's just not the case. Ken Shamrock is bigger too. He's had more experience overall in mixed martial arts, the competitive style mixed martial arts with the rules and the regulations, and not the no holds barred scenario. So I think Ken Shamrock wins this just sitting in his guard and by decision. I think it's as simple as that. The next fight is Dada 5000 versus Kimbo Slice. Look, overall, Kimbo Slice has more experience. Don't forget, he was on The Ultimate Fighter. Also, he does have some wrestling. It's not good, but I mean, he was on The Ultimate Fighter, and I do believe he did get Matt Mitrio into the floor. I think with a double leg, maybe? I mean, I could be wrong in that, but I remember Kimbo Slice taking someone down, and I was impressed. But Dada 5000, 2 wins, no losses. Kimbo Slice, 5 wins, 2 losses. It's not going past the first round. I don't think so anyway. And I think Kimbo, just with that little bit more experience, should probably win this fight by knockout. However, I think he's quite a bit older, isn't he? Maybe like in his 40s, and then Dada 5000's like 37 or something. So they're both old guys, but Kimbo Slice first round knockout. Thanks guys for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment below. Tell me what you think of both the Bellator fight and UFC fights. Tell me what you're excited about, what your picks are, and catch you in the next one.